Hello, good morning, everyone. I'd like to wish you all a warm welcome and thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm Chantal and I'm one of the business managers here at EPM. I'm joined today by experts Rachel Kershaw and Jan Renou, who will soon talk you through how we can support you with assessing your readiness for growth. At EPM, education is at the core of everything we do. Throughout the past 28 years that we've been established, we've worked really hard to develop a suite of services which are designed to enhance and improve the functionality of your schools and trusts. We're incredibly proud to support over 2,500 schools, including 200 MATs, on both an operational and strategic level. I'd like to encourage you all today to ask as many questions as possible. We want to keep Rachel and Jan incredibly busy at the end of the session. If you pop these into the chat box, which you'll see on the right-hand side, we can go over these at the end of the session. I'll now hand you over to Rachel, who will talk you through this morning's agenda.
So for today's agenda, what we want to do is take you through an overview of the national picture for MATs, what we understand is happening in a national context and how this is expanding growth for the sector. We want to help you have some considerations for what your trust capacity currently might look like, and then how that might need to develop and expand, not just in the school improvement category, but in all aspects of your trust development to get you in a position ready for growth. And then we also want to offer some understanding of the support and advice that we can provide to you if this is an area that is of particular interest to you moving forward. So to begin with, I'm going to introduce you to Jan and hand over to Jan, who is going to talk through the national context and some of those more school improvement aspects.
Good morning, everyone, and good to see the spread of trusts from across the region joining us this morning, and many that I know well. It's great to be part of the EPM team, and hopefully we will be able to help you with your continuing trust journey. As Rachel said, we're going to start by considering the context in which we're all working and assessing the landscape. And we are all expecting a new education white paper, but that's been delayed to give time for our new ministerial team to get to grips with the brief. However, we do understand from the DFE that there is pressure from the new Secretary of State to get the white paper out to us sooner rather than later. So we hope that we'll see that out early in the new year. And we've also had the comprehensive spending review. And what does that mean for schools? Well, a further 1.8 billion is added to COVID recovery, and that funding is over the next 3 years. So that brings the total to about 5 billion. And the DFE have indicated that primary schools will continue to benefit from the same per pupil rate as this year's recovery premium, and secondaries are expected to see their rates double. The government will move to lift the public sector pay freeze introduced last November for 21-22. So of the 4.7 billion coming in to increase per pupil funding, that money is also expected to fund pay rises. There is additional capital funding of about 2.6 billion to fund 30,000 additional places for children with special educational needs, and 150 million to support training and development for the entire early years workforce. This, however, to some of you out there who've been looking through it, may feel like a standstill for schools when you're facing rising costs, inflation, and still facing COVID. We'll see as that works through. And though there is a change of minister, I don't think there will be a change of direction of travel. There is pressure to move towards a single system in education. Presently, more than half of children and young people are educated in trusts, with the previous Secretary of State stating strong multi-academy trusts are the best structure. The benefits of multi-academy trusts were already clear, but have become more apparent during this pandemic. It's no longer viable for schools to be single entities. The school that stands alone is often a weaker school. What is needed is the safety net of a strong family, and the best family is an academy trust. Governance, risk and regulation sees the new Academy's handbook moving towards clearer expectations from DFE and ESFA on trust governance, with a continued focus on integrated curriculum and financial planning. And of course, trusts now are expected to take a wider civic role, with expectations that they will work together with other civic institutions for the betterment of their regions. And there also seems to be a loss of confidence in the present examination system following COVID, with a growing fear that our national assessment process is not fit for purpose any longer. And the outcome of the SEND review may require thinking around new free schools or expansion of existing provision. Ofsted has started its inspection programme, and MAT's summary evaluation process was announced in September this year. So the context is changing, and the direction of travel is towards a single education system. Presently, we see 37% of our primary schools are academies and 78% of secondary schools are academies. We've got a way to go with primary. And as we move towards this single system, it's our strong trusts that will have a key role in supporting this. The DFE and RSCs will be working with you and the sector to consolidate trusts, working to bring MATs into larger groupings and encourage SATs and empty MATs to partner or merge. And they'll also want small trusts to grow. There'll be a push from small to medium and large as rationalisation is looked at across the regions. Will expansion for you mean moves into new geographical areas, or just moving into a new phase of education for the trust, or will it include mergers? Whatever you choose to do, a starting point is your trust vision. What is your unifying vision and ethos? This is so important, and it's an important message for your own communities as you go through change. It's an anchor for them, but also for those joining you. Congruence with vision and values is often a starting point for any developing partnership. As we're moving on to the next slide, I'm going to be posing lots of questions, and I'm hopeful that Rachel, as she talks about the support we can give, actually shows you where we can come in and support you in solving some of the questions. So, you know, how and where do you want to grow, and what is your present structure like? Again, I say that RSCs and the DFE want to find some clarity now across the regions and some rationalisation, and they're going to want to know in their discussions with you where you stand and where you see your growth. So what is the landscape like across the regions of your MAT? What do they represent? You know, what is the mix of schools that you've got? And do you need a complete rethink, or are you going to build on what is already there? And what other educational establishments might you need or like to join your trust? Would you like special NAP? I know that a lot of trusts now are wanting to include within their trust their own alternative provision within their trust. And some trusts now are looking to be all through 0 to 18. You know, is that something that you're going to consider? For some trusts, their locality includes difficult issues of rurality, low pupil numbers and remoteness. So how could growth bring connectivity and sustainability to your trust? We all know that a strength of a trust is the close working and collaboration that's fostered and supported across all of its schools. But how do you maintain the clarity of vision and closeness of relationship as your trust grows? You need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of any present structure in order to be ready for your future trust growth. And making sense of the geography and the wide regional spread of clusters, hubs, rural, urban. What are the issues? What's your starting point for your trust? And where is your plan? So you're not, I don't think, starting from a blank sheet of paper. So geography plays a crucial role in determining the success of MATs, and in particular ensuring the trust is governed effectively. We all know there's no right geographical spread or an upper limit of distance or travel between schools. Nevertheless, experience shows that geographical isolation of schools within a trust should be avoided. Decisions need to be considered of working around the best schools. So does that mean increasing the larger trust because it's got the capacity? or creating satellites or hubs from that larger trust, or creating separate self-sustaining mats? Do the clusters link to the whole mat, or are they satellites of a central mat? Each structure requires some careful thought, most especially about the resources needed in the central team, your school improvement support, and its financial sustainability. And again, Rachel will pick up on some of this later on. So moving on to the next slide. What do the best trusts do as they change and grow? Well, some of you may have seen this. The Ambition School Leadership has published the outcome of its research with trust leaders on this specific topic. They found that trust leaders spoke of points in their growth journey of non-incremental change, where a trust has to break with a previous strategic or operational approach and make a shift. This they call a break point. So what works for a trust of 2 to 3 schools won't necessarily transfer across for a trust with 10 schools. So there is a point where an approach stops working efficiently and a new approach is needed. And these, they have found, are associated with change in scale of the trust, as you would expect. But research also found that it can be associated with changes in geography, policy, context, and the type and performance of schools that you bring into your trust. So that they're important areas for you to consider. It's important in readiness for growth for trust leaders to continually review their structures and processes in response to changes across the trust. And if we move on, understanding the breakpoints from performance and your performance profile. So you may have a particular performance profile in your trust, and as you go, that performance profile may change. And so there are things that you need to consider in that. So trusts operating a highly aligned model can find that high-performing schools face a glass ceiling and want to break away to innovate and drive further improvement. In underperformance, trusts operating a highly autonomous model can find schools with low performance face the opposite, a glass floor, where a more directive approach is needed and standards and ways of doing things have to be imposed until performance improves. In trusts which focus on alignment, underperformance can still require targeted school improvement, resources to be deployed to provide additional capacity. And autonomy is something we've talked about in the sector for a long time, and there are pluses and minuses for this. Where a school's high performance means it no longer has to stick to the trust school improvement approach. For trusts that pursue this alignment, schools gain earned autonomy when they perform well enough to step away to innovate. For trusts that pursue autonomy, the notion of earned autonomy can be a way to justify why lower performers are not given the freedom to pursue their own approach. And some CEOs also use this approach to encourage high performing schools to join their trust. But I would just again throw out some questions for you. How does your trust translate vision into its school improvement strategy and operating model? How might your trust strategy and operations be affected by growth? What differentiates high and low performing academies in your trust? CEOs using earned autonomy must bear 3 things in mind. Firstly, CEOs need to consider the message it sends about cohesion and alignment to schools in the MAT which do not have earned autonomy. Secondly, schools with earned autonomy still need to be willing and able to contribute to the MAT's-wide collaboration and school-to-school support. That's absolutely essential for us to even want a self-healing trust. And thirdly, there needs to be regular performance reviews and clarity on the conditions under which the MAT would intervene to remove earned autonomy for weak school performance in some of these high-performing schools. So let's move on and look at what growth brings in increased demand. Accountability and oversight is the obvious first point. When working with a small number of schools, the CEO can actually feel able to return oversight through communication and actually direct monitoring. They can actually go around the schools easily, get in there and see for themselves what's going on. But as MATs reach a scale of operation, they have to develop tighter monitoring systems, recruit new educational leads to the executive team in order to retain that oversight as the number of pupils and the size of accountability grows. Governance, it's never too soon to clarify governance structures. However, governance is never fixed and it must evolve with the growth of the trust. Can I make a special plea that we get clarity between the board and the local academy councils? Many trusts that I talk to don't seem to have made that connection and the feedback loop from local academy councils back to the board. And MATs that initially started up by taking representation from all their local governing boards onto the main board have found that as they move to scale, that's an impractical way to move forward. So all MATs, even the smallest, need to expand the professional expertise and skills mix on the board to reflect the scale of the MAT and the accompanying accountability. Achieving alignment, if a MAT has a culture of collaborative convergence, then leaders have to decide the approach to take when a new school joins. So this is really essential as you grow. Will they reopen those areas to debate, leave the school to continue with its previous approach, or expect it to align with the trust without any input? And what are the risks of each approach? This choice becomes particularly challenging when the new school is high performing. And a lot of trusts say to us they find it more difficult to encourage high performing schools or high performing trusts to join them. Communications becomes an issue as you grow. MATs operating a smaller scale can every September get all their trust staff together in one school for a communication, for to get them together and to reaffirm what they're doing for the year. But as the MAT grows, the challenge for the CEO is to keep the messages consistent and frequent across a larger group of staff and students. And the role of the CEO as the MAT grows, CEOs naturally need to consider where they have expertise, where they can add the greatest value, and where they should therefore spend their time. Similarly, they should think about their executive team, their capacity and capability, and how to recruit for expertise that complements their own. CEOs will need to adapt their role in school improvement as the trust goes. CEOs have a really important role in energising the trust, its structure, and all its underlying relationships, unifying around the vision and the values. And we move on now to opportunities. If we get this right, we should have sustainability and success across the trust. We should be financially sound with a mix of large and small schools, with good pupil numbers and sound financial management to make the best use of resources. A strong family with shared support, the best leading the rest. Capacity in school improvement with no school left behind. Succession planning and capacity in leadership across the trust, economies of scale in purchasing power and resource provision, and estates management and capital funding grants, and more of that from Rachel, ensuring the viability and success of the trust and its communities. We can't underestimate how hugely complex and demanding the journey is for you and your trusts, and I'm full of admiration for the work you are doing, and proud to help in any way we can. But more of this from Rachel. And I'll now hand over to Rachel to talk through a bit more about our operation and our support for trusts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. That's excellent. Really helpful. So now if we go a little bit more deeper into the support that we might be able to offer in trying to pull all of this together, some fantastic information there from Jan, but actually what does that mean on the ground and what can you start doing if this is an area you're thinking about? So from an EPM perspective, we have been working in the field of multi-academy trusts and looking at MAT growth for a long time, and we have a unique understanding of how to support that strategic vision for MAT growth. And I think some of what Jan's talked about has given you a flavour for that level of involvement and detail that we have. We understand the national position that the Department for Education and the Regional Schools Commissioners are currently taking in terms of looking for MATs that can join together, so in MAT mergers, or looking for smaller MATs that can potentially grow and develop and look at how that works. And we have close conversations and discussions with RSCs up and down the country to look at that specific regional context as to how we and them can support schools to move that process along. And we're very conscious that the agenda on this is going to develop and increase over the next coming year. And I think on that basis, what we're suggesting is if you get yourself in a position that you're ready now to start those conversations, it means you're much more able to go into those discussions with other MATs or with other schools with confidence and with real clarity around what your ambitions are. We have done multi-academy trust conversions for a long time. We have over 300 different examples of a range of services that we've provided and conversion processes we've supported. So we have seen a lot of different models and have that experience that we can bring to you. But I would definitely stress that every single case and every single trust we work with is completely bespoke and unique. And that's the excitement of what we're doing in terms of actually working with you to develop your own bespoke solutions to how you want to move forward. So then what we started to do is based on our knowledge and understanding was to begin to think about where trusts might be sitting at the moment, and right from the very starter trusts of either an empty MAT or a single academy trust, right through to some of the regional and national multi-academy trust organisations that we have across the country. What does the current landscape look like, and how can people begin to identify what situation they might be in, and then what their position for growth might look like moving forward. So are you a seeker MAT or a seeker single academy trust, where actually what you want to do is you want to partner with a really high professional, high performing multi-academy trust, be part of that organisation, and you're looking for the right fit for your single academy trust or small multi-academy trust? Or for example, are you a stable trust where you've been operating as a medium or small multi-academy trust for a number of years, you've been growing quite steadily, but actually now you want to consolidate and consider what your position is and look what the opportunities are moving forward? They're just a couple of examples, and I would encourage you, maybe on reflection of today's webinar, to go back to your boards or to go back with your CEOs and to have a think about this list and where might you fit within that, and what really are your ambitions. And I think, that's probably the starting point for your board to be considering what position do we want to be in, without ruling out all the options, but really what is our direction of travel that we're trying to look for. We know the RSCs are particularly focused on seeker and stable MATs at the moment, and are really looking to how they can bring those two together in terms of matching the needs of different trusts across the regions that they're working with. So certainly a starting point for you to have a begin to look at what your needs might be. So then our next step would be to begin to think about, well, what are the priorities that you need to, the areas of priority that you need to focus on, and what might the RSC be looking for when you're approaching them in terms of, we've got an application, or even before that is a very early conversation about, we're thinking of developing our growth, or we're thinking of moving in an area where we might be growing and expanding our trust. And we, in our conversations with the RSC, one of the first things they say is, please encourage trusts to talk to us very early on, because we can engage and support them early. So please go and talk to your RSC if this is an area you're thinking of, and we would always encourage that from a very early point. Some of the things that we know from our experience of working on applications and working with the RSC is that they're looking for that clear vision for pupils and your community and your school, your vision for your trust. What are you trying to achieve, and what's your ambition over the coming years? They're very focused on governance, and governance is a very important function for them in terms of, making sure the governance structure is right moving forward. Attainment, obviously, and progress, and ensuring that you're not going to destabilise the current high-performing schools that you might have within your trust already, or if you're looking to support schools that might be coming in with lower levels of attainment and progress, how can you offer that level of support? What are you particularly looking for in there? And that leads into the school improvement record and your principles for how you're developing that. Financial structure and your central structure, what that might look like. If you're a very small trust, that might be quite straightforward at the moment, but what are your ambitions for developing that as your MAT grows? Or alternatively, if you're looking to join a trust, what are you thinking might be your views around a central structure that you're keen on? Is that more a back office financial function? Is that a school improvement function? Are you looking for specialist areas that you want a trust to offer to you? And what would be the impacts of a top slice if that trust are offering one, and how does that support your trust and look with that? So we pulled all of this information together. We considered all of these different aspects that would need to be considered as a trust is thinking along these lines. And what we came up with was a group of what we're calling at the moment enablers. So the next slide will bring up the enablers. And these are 9 specific areas that we feel cover all of the different aspects that you should be considering if you're wanting to grow your own MAT, or if you're looking to join a MAT and grow yourselves. They cover what we believe are the full range of questions that the RSC will want to know, but they more importantly put you in a position where you have a really clear articulated understanding of exactly what position your single academy trust or your multi-academy trust is in at the moment, and you have a really clear then defined plan and ambition for what you want to do going forward and how you move that forward. Jan's already given you some information about that, but if I maybe just pick 2 of these as an example of the types of things that we believe are important to consider when you're looking at any of these aspects in any of these areas. If we start at the top of the wheel and we look at vision, culture and ethos. So some of the areas that you need to consider, and as I said, Jan's mentioned these, is how well does your vision, your ethos, your culture align across the schools in your current MAT? Does it flow through the decisions that you are making on a daily, weekly basis? Can you see it in practice in the schools? Does it flow through your policy statements? Is there a really clear, strong golden thread that runs through all of that activities that you're operating in the MAT? And if it doesn't, what stages do you need to get that into a place where you're feeling that is moving forward? Have you considered, in terms of your culture of the MAT, what a change in terms of either significant growth would look like for your trust? Have you begin to think about the change management process on your staff, on your employers, on your stakeholders, and how you might manage people through that change process? Looking then at the bottom side of the wheel, potentially on the governance aspect, what does strong and compliant governance look like from a national perspective, from a compliance perspective, but also from your own trust? Are there any areas you've got for development? And what we try to do is hold a mirror up to you, so we're in a very safe environment, are helping you reflect on potentially some opportunities or some areas for development that you might know are there, but actually you maybe not been confident enough to pull out and really consider this is an area of development that we need to consider. What we will also do is help you look at your opportunities and look at where you've got your real strengths that you can build on it and develop and really promote and publicise around your strengths. So in terms of governance and capability, how well can you articulate your governance offer to other schools that might be looking to join you as a multi-academy trust? Or if you're looking to join a trust, how much do you understand what your red lines would be for governance and your understanding of what a local academy structure might look like for governance, and what that offer would be there, what you particularly would need from an offer from a multi-academy trust that you might be looking to join. So there's just 2 examples, but obviously there are 9 different areas and a lot more detail in each of those that we would work with you through. So pulling all of those enablers together, what we have developed is what we're calling our Readiness for Growth methodology. And this is a specific piece of support that we would offer to trusts to be able to come in and, through a series of different activities, really help you to assess your position against each of those 9 enablers. We'd come in initially and develop a specific timeline for you for this review process, very conscious of your current capacity, your current ability, and the people that you would want in that review process, and the support that you would need to undertake that review. We really think it's important to have an engagement meeting with the key people across the trust who would be involved in the review, so that we can tailor the review to your specific needs. We're not suggesting this is just a checklist where, you know, there are some boxes to tick and it's a very straightforward yes and no, we can do that, no, we can't do that. This is a real deep dive review, as I said, holding up a mirror to your trust in a very safe environment where we hope to be able to get under the skin of some of the issues that might be happening within your trust, so we can help you to develop opportunities to improve those and change them. Once we've had that initial engagement session, we'd then look at an extensive review that we'd complete in-house with EPM subject matter experts. So we're really proud that we would have specialists like Jan involved from a curriculum, from a leadership perspective. We have finance experts involved, we have governance experts involved, health and safety, HR, and we have our very highest levels of staff with the most detailed subject matter levels that would be helping to undertake the review, so that you get real quality in terms of how those questions are asked, the information that's understood, and then the feedback that we can give back to you as well in terms of the information that we can help you develop and how we can promote your action planning moving forward. As a result of the review, we would produce a very detailed report for you, which gives all of those opportunities and all of those strengths that we've identified with you, but then also identifies where you need to move forward with certain areas as well. Would work with you on that and develop a final plan that you're happy with, and a very clear action plan, which we often feel is really helpful for CEOs and trust boards to then think, right, what do we need to do next? Where do we need to move forward? What are our priorities for the next period? And then how close are we to be able to move those conversations on with multi-academy trusts or other schools that are looking to join us. And we don't just leave you there then to get on with it. We follow that up with an aftercare meeting, an aftercare session where we can help to support you and see how your developments have progressed and moved forward in that respect. We're finding so far the feedback on the review is incredible. People are really feeling that this is a very safe environment, as I said, to be able to kind of share all of their concerns, all of their areas of development, and that we can offer some really constructive and supportive advice in terms of how you can be prepared to move forward. It helps you articulate your conversations for when you're then beginning to have those conversations with other single academy trusts or multi-academy trusts, and puts you in a more confident position to be able to move forward and to do that. And the information that we're sharing as part of the action plan is really valuable when you're putting your applications to the RSC and in terms of your merger forms as well, because it gives that real robust evidence that you've actually gone and done the thinking behind this and really prepared yourself for moving forward. And that's what the RSC are really keen to look for, that growth isn't just happening by accident. It's a managed growth progress across the regions, and that we have got really strong MATs who are the ones that are going to be system leaders moving forward and into the future. So on the next slide, there we go. I have some examples of the types of support, not just for readiness to grow assessments. And obviously that is one of the areas we want to talk to you about mainly today, but some other examples of the types of support that we offer to trusts as well. So we do support MAT mergers and MAT single academy trust conversions and schools looking to join MATs. And we've supported, as I said, over 300 of those across our time. And we're very practiced in that process. So you might already have schools that are talking to you about that joining your MAT, and we can help with that process. And that might include the due diligence or the finance process, HR, health and safety. It might include looking at essential services review, or it might include, particularly looking at project management support that you might need in those areas. So I won't go through all of those, but that just gives you a flavour. We've had a question through in the chat, which, just bear with me 1 second, which I think is probably relevant at this point, so I'll just pick that up. So the question is, what funding is available to support MATs when they are looking to grow or expand? So we know that schools that are becoming academies get access to conversion grant, £25,000 at the moment, but there isn't much funding available for multi-academy trusts when they are looking to grow, or when multi-academy trusts are looking to merge with each other. There isn't kind of immediate access to funding to support that. What we've been successful with recently is supporting trusts to apply for TCAF funding. So that's been available right across this year for growth projects that have been approved between January and December this year, and the TCAF has been really well received in terms of supporting that growth in many of the trusts that we've worked with. We anticipate, no promises, but we anticipate that next year there will be something very similar if it isn't just a TCAF version 3, because we know that the RSCs, this will be a priority for them in terms of MAT mergers, and we know the DfE are listening to those concerns from existing MATs about how do you support us in that ability to grow and that ability to transfer and move into this new field. So we anticipate that there could be some funding for that as well. So watch this space. It came, I think it was about Easter time, it was announced last year, so we're hoping it'll be on a similar timeline, but there might be more of that when the white paper is released as well. Okay, I think that probably covers all of my questions, so I'm handing back over to Chantel.
Hello, thank you, Rachel. It's really, really, really useful for you to go back over those. I'd like to say a huge thank you to you, Rachel and Jan, for an incredibly insightful session. I hope that you have all found it useful and insightful also. If you do have any questions, please put them into the chat now. I can see that 2 questions have come in, so we can go over those, but if you do have any questions, again, put them into the chat and we'll get round to those. So I think this question is probably for you, Jan. It's what are the issues for a trust board in considering taking an underperforming school into the trust?
Thank you, Chantel, and thanks to Rachel for your deliberations there, because I think you've answered some of this. I think you would have to convince your RSC and the advisory board that you had the school improvement capacity to take on this underperforming school without affecting the quality of the rest of the schools within the trust. You'd have to have the geography and the fit with the trust as well. And they'd want to see that you'd got the due diligence issue in place in order for you to look at the finance involved in taking on an underperforming school if there were any issues. So it's really readiness for taking something on that is going to take resources from you, because if it's underperforming, is it underperforming just in its output and outcomes for children, or is it underperforming across the board in how it's led and managed? So that will pull on all the resources you've got in the trust, and the advisory board with the RSC will want to see that you've looked at that, you've got your due diligence right, and you've got the capacity to put in place the things that need to happen for that school without it affecting or reducing the quality of the trust itself. Hope that's helpful. Chantal, is there anything else?
Thanks, Jan. Yes, I've got another question for you, so don't go away. As an empty mat, what are our growth issues? What will the RSC be looking for?
The RSC will be looking for you to actually join another empty mat, or to join a small mat, or join with another SAT. They will be looking for some growth. And if you want to join, or if you want people to join you, what is your offer? What's your capacity again? What's your readiness for growth? And can you convince an RSC? So partnering with a SAT or another MAT will be what is expected of you, and hopefully you can get on the front foot and start to look for partners that you can work with. But again, it comes back to vision. You know, is there some congruence between where you are and what your trust ethos and mission is with the partnering school or MAT that you want to join or work with? So I think we've covered a lot of these off, Chantal, as Rachel and I have spoken, but it is about getting ready, looking at what the issues are and making sure you can answer the RSC and the DfE to say, yes, we've thought about that, and these are what we're doing, and this is where we are. But there will be an expectation that empty mats and SATs move and work together and partner. I don't know whether Rachel wants to come in on that, or...
Well, we have another question, Jan.
Right, another question.
What are the benefits of a MAT already set up without a central executive team that has healthy reserves in each school? If it is not financially beneficial, what would the other benefits be? That's probably more for Rachel. So
Yeah,
if we
I think
hand over
I'll
to
pass
Rachel.
that to Rachel, yeah.
So benefits of not a MAT set up without central executive team, but with healthy reserves, is if you're looking to join a trust, that is obviously something that is beneficial to them, because there isn't a structure that's formed there that they may need to consider when staffing arrangements are being shared across the trust that's joining. If you're looking to expand and develop your own trust, then you've got almost a blank canvas to start from, and that's really great opportunity to be in, and you can develop and shape your MAT as you want to. But I think what I would be suggesting is you need some really early thinking about that, and you need to really consider the different opportunities that might bring to you. There's a financial benefit in that you haven't got a strong core team already. They're bringing that top slice and that cost out of the schools. So that potentially is a potential risk or a small threat, in that those schools that you're a part of already would need to understand that structure is going to have to grow and going to have to develop. And some people see that as you're taking money away from us. And so the conversation around how you would set up your central functions and your central services and that executive team would need to be handled carefully. You would need to have lots of thinking about that before you necessarily started moving in a certain direction. Hopefully that's answered it. If I've not quite picked up on the question properly, just put something back in the chat and I'll come back to it.
I think admin slightly edited the question, Rachel. So it's benefits to creating a central executive team.
So the benefit, I'm presuming then that's the benefits to creating a team if you're in a small MAT or if you're joining a MAT. And obviously the benefits to creating that central team are that you can have a focus across all of your schools. So as the MAT grows and develops, you won't have the time and the ability to just work with one or two schools as you might have been as a small MAT. You will need to create a central executive team to be able to cope with the capacity that you will need to have and that you will need to develop across those widening trusts, and how you will then be able to hold those to account in terms of their financial performance, their stability in school improvement, their governance aspects, and report to your trust board in terms of those key areas of accountability that they will need to be held as well. So there is, in your direction of growth, there are breakpoints, as Jan talked about, and certain stages that executive team and central services will need to develop over a managed period of time. And there isn't a straightforward solution that just slots in on day 478, for example. But there is a process that you can go through in terms of beginning to think about what that might look like moving forward.
Thanks, Rachel. Does anyone else have any other further questions? Okay. If not, I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope that you have found the session insightful. If you would like to find out any more about how we could support your trust, please do just drop me a line either into the chat box or send me a very quick email. My details will appear at the end of this presentation. I'll also send each of you a recording of the presentation so you can share it with your colleagues if it's necessary. Our next leadership webinar will be next year, on the 18th of January, and this will be around aligning your curriculum, financial and people strategy, which I think will lead really nicely on from this webinar that we've seen today. So if you have enjoyed the session again, I would appreciate it if you could take 2 minutes to fill out the survey on the screen. I know there have been some IT issues today, so my apologies for that. But in spite of that, I hope that you found the information really useful, and it's glad to see so many of you here. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a great day.